The Cold War was a 50-year period of intense political rivalry and military tension that started in the aftermath of World War II. This was not a standard war with militaries, battles and fighting, but it was a political standoff between two ideologies and the two largest superpowers at the time, the United States and the USSR. This 5-minute video will provide a quick and concise overview of the key events, players and ideologies that defined this era. The Cold War began in the late 1940s when the victorious Allied powers, particularly the US and the Soviet Union, found themselves at odds over the future of Europe and Asia. The US had just created the world's first nuclear weapon, and along with the defeat of Nazi Germany, a power vacuum emerged, setting the stage for the superpower showdown. At the core of the Cold War were stark ideological differences. The United States championed democracy, capitalism and individual freedoms, while the Soviet Union promoted communism and the idea of a classless society. These opposing ideologies laid the foundation for decades of conflict. In 1947, US President Harry Truman introduced the Truman Doctrine, pledging support for nations threatened by communism. Shortly after, the Marshall Plan provided economic aid to help war-torn European countries to rebuild. These initiatives aimed to contain the spread of communism and foster stability in Europe. At the end of World War II, Germany was split into two, with the US, UK and France taking this part, and the USSR taking this part. Berlin, Germany's capital, was also split between the powers, which led to further tension. One of the early flashpoints in the Cold War was the Berlin Blockade. In 1948, the Soviet Union blocked all land and water access to West Berlin, prompting the United States and its allies to launch the Berlin Airlift, which supplied the city with essential goods by air for nearly a year. The Soviets knew that if they were to shoot down any planes, it would surely result in war, and eventually in 1949 they stopped the blockade. Both superpowers engaged in a dangerous arms race, developing increasingly powerful nuclear weapons. The Soviets created their first atomic bomb in 1949, and each time a new one was created by either side, it would be better than the last, until the largest and most destructive bomb, the Tsar Bomber, was made in 1961. The fear of mutually assured destruction kept them from direct conflict, but the world lived under the constant threat of nuclear war through the Cold War era. In 1962, the world came dangerously close to nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The US discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba, which could attack the whole of the contingent United States, but the US also had missiles in Turkey made to target Moscow in the event of war. This led to a tense standoff, but eventually both sides agreed to remove their missiles, which avoided a catastrophic conflict. The Cold War played out in proxy wars around the globe. The Korean War, which was 1950 to 1953, and the Vietnam War, which was 1955 to 1975, were two notable battlegrounds where the US and the Soviet Union supported opposing sides. These conflicts resulted in immense human suffering and political tension, and they still affect us today, with a communist Vietnam and a divided Korean peninsula, communist North Korea and capitalist South Korea. The Cold War extended into space exploration, with the US and the Soviet Union competing to achieve milestones like the first human in space and the moon landing. This rivalry led to significant advancements in science and technology. By the late 1980s, the Soviet Union faced economic and political challenges that weakened its grip on Eastern Europe. The policies of the final Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, such as glasnost, which means openness, and perestroika, which means restructuring, contributed to the eventual dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, along with all other communist puppet states. This marked the end of the Cold War. The Cold War, which lasted for nearly 5 decades, shaped the course of human history and left a huge mark on the world, which is still felt today. It tested the limits of human cooperation and served as a reminder of the devastating consequences of ideological conflict. While it ended without a direct military confrontation between the superpowers, its legacy continues to influence global politics and international relations to this day. The Cold War has what some might call a resurgence in the recent years with the invasion of Ukraine. However, that is for a different video. Thank you for joining us in this brief exploration of the Cold War. For a more in-depth understanding of this complex period in history, we encourage you to delve deeper into the numerous books, documentaries, and resources available. Please like, share, and subscribe for more educational content, and remember to stay curious about the world's history and its impact on our present and future. Thank you for watching.